morning, excuse me, good morning everyone, and welcome to our last day of the 2026 Internet 2 Community Exchange. I have the pleasure of opening this session with an esteemed panel that are here to talk to you about how stronger together with shared services as a strategic multiplier in research and education. On Tuesday, we did a session on global perspectives of collaboration, but it's a pleasure to have a session bringing it a little closer to home across the United States with this panel with diverse perspectives, and hope that you all will ask them some challenging questions, and especially to my boss, Sean O'Brien. But to kick it off, I'm going to introduce Tom Dugas, the CIO of Duquesne University, and thank you all.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Stronger Together, Shared Services as a Strategic Multiplier in Research and Education. In today's higher education and research landscape, we face a convergence of challenges that no single institution, regardless of size or resources, can effectively address alone. Budget constraints are tightening, cybersecurity threats are evolving faster than ever, the rapid adoption of artificial intelligence is reshaping how we teach, learn, and conduct research, and the complexity of our technology environments and research environments continues to grow exponentially. Against this backdrop, shared services has emerged not just as a cost-saving measure, but as a strategic imperative, a force multiplier that enables us to do more together, more than we could ever do in isolation. This morning's session will allow our distinguished panel of community leaders to highlight shared services already available to our research and education community today. We also explore what comes next, where are the emerging opportunities to expand shared models, how do we eliminate duplicative effort and investment, how can we collectively tackle the challenges that no institution should be able to solve on their own. And throughout this discussion, we'll examine how shared services amplify institutional expertise, enabling collaboration on common problems, pooling specialized knowledge, and delivering outcomes that exceed what any one institution could do independently. We'll explore new domain types, right for collaboration, discuss funding and governance models that work, and consider how to align shared services with institutional priorities in an era that is defined by constraints and rapid change. So let's take some time to meet our panelists and explore how these shared services can be strategic multipliers for our community needs. And so just really briefly about myself, I know Tara had given me a little bit of introduction. So I am the CIO for Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And some people might want to call it Duquesne. It is not Duquesne, it is Duquesne. Duquesne is a private Puritan Catholic institution in Pittsburgh. Most people are pretty familiar with other Catholic institutions like the Jesuits. We are the only Puritan institution. We were founded in 1878. We have, somewhere around 8,500 students at this time, graduate, undergraduate, professional degrees. My work in Internet 2 has been things like the Cloud Services Working Group, the Cloud Constituent Group, the Cloud Scorecard. I'm currently working on the Anthropic Service Validation and some other things. So I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to moderate this session, and I'm going to turn it over to some of my colleagues here, and we're going to start with Jennifer.
Good morning. I'm Jen March-Wackers. I'm the Executive Director for the Inter-University Council of Ohio's Purchasing Group. The IUC is an association of the 14 public universities in Ohio, and the Purchasing Group represents all of Ohio higher education. So we do a lot of work with folks from community colleges, technical colleges, private institutions, along with our public universities. We've also started an effort in the last few years we call IUC Collaborative Initiatives, which is a deeper, more robust shared services attempt, taking our work beyond just contracts. So I'm excited to be here and talk with the panel.
And Leah?
Hi, I'm Leah Lang. I'm the Senior Director of Partnerships and Corporate Engagement for EDUCAUSE. Raise your hand if you don't know what EDUCAUSE is. Okay, cool. Okay. You liars.
Those were flags. Yeah.
Right. Go find them out.
It's hard to see from here, but I feel like, okay, so You're familiar with EDUCAUSE. I feel like EDUCAUSE and Internet 2 are complementary organizations. I like to describe EDUCAUSE as kind of a breadth of understanding of all the complexities of technology in higher education, whereas Internet 2 is really depth on a specific area of technology and focusing on research. I have worked with these guys for a very long time. I live down the street from Tom in Pittsburgh, but only ever see him when we're traveling. I have, so on the slides, yes, okay, so the slides got a little bit, okay. I participate in the Net Plus PAG occasionally whenever Sean invites me to participate in the PAG. And also I have really a perspective on shared services from the perspective of partnerships and how working together can really amplify your work and the innovation that we do.
Thanks, Leah. And Natalie?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Natalie Palmer. I'm the Vice President of Southern Crossroads, more affectionately known as SOX. So we are the Southeast Regional Network that connects Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee to Internet 2, to ESNet, and to other major US and international research networks. SOX does provide high-speed global connectivity as well as some other commodity services to about 35 participants across the Southeast. And they range from colleges and universities to state networks. We have a federal agency, a federal lab also as one of our participants. We've been a network member of Internet 2 since 1998. And I love the raise your hand. I like using the quote from one of our fellow RINs, Dave Marble, who says, if you've seen one RIN, you've seen one RIN. So our experiences are quite diverse across the Quilt network of RINs in the US. SOX has been able to connect our participants with Net Plus services like DocuSign, as well as ServiceNow. And then we've also seen connections that we've made with services like DDoS, as well as Cloud Connect. I look forward to the discussions today.
Thank you. And Sean O'Brien.
Raise your hand if you don't know Sean.
Yes, I'm back. All right, great. So, hi everyone, I'm Sean O'Brien. I run Net Plus programs at Internet 2. Hopefully you all know what Internet 2 is. I'm gonna skip that part in the interest of time. I think the perspective I'll bring here today is we've had a lot of success in the Net Plus program working across institutions to co-create, whether that's co-creating contracts, whether that's co-creating business models, whether that's co-creating artifacts around security or accessibility, and also developing technical solutions together collaboratively. So I think that model really lends itself well to a national conversation around shared services and what the art of the possible is.
Thanks, Sean. So let's get into some questions. So the first one I'm kind of curious about, from our panel. There appears to be signals that we're seeing that there's a shift towards more shared services. Are you all seeing this? Let's maybe start with Jennifer over at the end, and we'll kind of work our way down.
Sure. I mean, we've had shared services through cooperative purchasing for 60 plus years in Ohio, so I wouldn't say there's more. I would say it's deeper. People want to do more meaningful things together. They want to start collaborating more on service delivery, back office functions, and certainly IT fits hugely into that. We have cybersecurity as a big focus for us to collaborate together to give ourselves the best opportunity to be aware of and responsive to all the threats that are out there.
Right. Leah?
You just want to like go
Yeah,
right
we're just going to
down.
go right
All
down for
that's
this one.
good. I agree with Jen. So to kind of broaden the context of the conversation for this discussion, I'm thinking of shared services as everything from, Cal Arts providing ERP and operational services to Vermont College of Fine Arts, and they're on two ends of the country, and that's very like operational, we're sharing a service, all the way to maybe even just Net Plus and like sharing the concept of governance, and really any model where or individuals or organizations are coming together from different perspectives to create a common solution that then is used by those entities. So the signals I think we're seeing at EDUCAUSE are more people coming to our conference year over year, even though it's becoming increasingly challenging to travel to events, because we're hearing now more than ever, we need to get together and have those conversations around how to collaborate on governance and how to share ideas on how to implement services that we're all using together.
Thank you, Leah. And it's interesting, in higher ed, we kind of give away our intellectual property for free to each other, so it's kind of an odd thing that we do compared to industry. And Natalie, what are your thoughts?
So many of our participants are really looking at how to, and they're gravitating toward reducing duplicative services across their campuses. If they see where their services, the shared services are helping to meet their individual goals, that might be cost reduction, that might be looking at compliance, looking at how they staff, have reduced their staffing complexity issues, then they're definitely willing to make that jump if the shared services are meeting those goals.
Yeah. So it's interesting, at Duquesne, just to give you some perspective, we, about 7 or 8 years ago, took our financial group that covered IT and facilities and merged them together to cover HR and facilities and other things like that. There's obviously some opportunities for alignments because they are the 2 largest capital budget managers on campus, so it just made sense to do some alignment. Sean, what do you think Internet 2 could do in terms of thinking about this uniqueness of what's happening in the shared services space? You guys, are your members coming to you and talking to you about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think to some degree there's a perfect storm of so many different things hitting at once. You have a generational technology in terms of artificial intelligence. You have declining enrollment. You have downward sort of financial and economic pressure on higher education in particular to reduce costs at the same time when industry, whom we buy a lot of technology from, is under both inflationary pressure and pressure as organizations that have gone out into the public market and being publicly traded companies to grow revenue quarter over quarter. You backdrop that with a decline in federal funding that, as was talked about earlier this week, could become a very significant decline in federal funding. You have workforce challenges. There are so many different aspects all hitting an organization and institution at once. I'm sure you feel this. I'm sure many of you feel this. I'm sure many of you in the room feel this. That creates an impetus to go together. I think one example that we're working on right now, it's not a pure share service as it exists today, doesn't mean it may not be in the future, is thinking about how do we help institutions, I talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, prepare for developing and building out secure research enclaves. As an example, that's something everyone needs to do. It's a regulatory pressure. Each institution going on that journey on their own is costly. It's a lot of work. It's a high compliance risk. And it is duplicate. Someone brought it up earlier. It's duplication of effort. So I think in Internet 2, you think about, we have a 30-year history of building things together that are shared services, a shared network, shared identity infrastructure. I think there will be new moments. I think we heard from Tripti, our CEO on Tuesday, about some of those that are coming, where we'll have an opportunity to work with you all as part of our strategic planning process, as part of the programs that exist, to really identify those opportunities and seize that moment.
Thanks, Sean. So you led into this a little bit, Sean, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Shared services, this isn't new. I mean, this has been around for a long time. You talked about the fact that this community, in fact, has been doing it for 30 plus years. So what's changed now? Why does this feel like such a more urgent moment that we're facing, where people are are feeling that they have to jump in and do this right now and that they need to get involved. You know, Natalie, what are your thoughts on why now? Why is this such an important thing to do now?
Well, specifically because you'd mentioned the federal piece, that's been something that many of our participants, some of the newer ones, have had some angst and concern about, because it's been difficult with the federal funding models that for research in particular, and that's providing some additional pressure to those campuses as they're looking at the scrutiny of their operational costs. So, you know, now looking at shared services means that maybe the participants have an opportunity to have services and look at what do we continue, and maybe that's through a shared service, or then what do we have to look at that's essential for our campus.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, interesting enough, I'll add something to that. It's gone beyond even our technology side. You know, a couple regional universities in Pennsylvania have started to merge their police force, just like communities have.
Yeah, okay.
So that was kind of unique to me. I hadn't heard that before. You know, obviously in the municipalities, we've seen mergers of police forces quite often, but I had never seen it in a university, and now we're starting to see things like that emerge in shared services. Yeah. So it's really interesting in how that's kind of transpiring.
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
The one other thing that has been coming to mind for me too lately is around just finite resources and supply chain issues. Like, it's no longer, you know, should we or shouldn't we? We actually don't have the hardware to support everyone going on their own, and the expense of providing all of that hardware, even if you can get it, is just astronomical, or will become astronomical. And we're trying to do, especially with AI, we're trying to do infinite things with finite resources. So the only way to actually achieve our goals together is to come together and do it.
Great point.
Yep,
and I want to come back to one thing on the finance side. I know I already talked about the money side, and obviously I think it's no surprise to anyone we're talking about that a lot of this is financial. It's not necessarily altruistic of we just want to work with each other more. Although I do hope that continues to be the case, both in this community and in the world we live in. I think one of the things that's really financially interesting to me looking at AI, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how does AI relate to cloud? How does 2025, 2026 look like 2011, 2012? What are the parallels? What are the things we did right with cloud? What are the things we did wrong with cloud that we can learn from as we adopt AI? I think one of the things that was interesting about cloud, whether you're talking about infrastructure as a service or software as a service, we talked about this a little bit yesterday in a CIO panel. It wasn't saving money. There was sort of this idea that, oh, this is going to save money. But at the same time, a lot of times you were replacing services. It was, oh, I'm moving from my Adobe licensing to Adobe Cloud. And the financial models are different. The financial models of moving from on-prem infrastructure to Amazon Web Services, you're moving from OpEx or CapEx to OpEx, other way around. Doesn't matter, don't worry about it. So those are all different. With AI, it is just a new expense. You're not eliminating something and bringing in AI. And when you backdrop something like that with the fact that there's not new revenue growth from tuition, from research expenditure, from anything else, that really forces the question of, okay, how do we do this?
Yeah. Yep. We do a lot with cost calculations at IUC, and it's interesting because we have so many audiences, not just the CIOs or the CISOs, to talk with about this. And so VPs of finance want to know bottom line, you know, what's the cost savings? Well, it's a lot of cost avoidance, actually. And so you're not necessarily going to show them dollars saved, but you're going to show them, like what Sean's talking about, you know, an opportunity to enter into a new area at a lesser cost, right? So we're not saving money, but we're avoiding costs that way. Another thing that we try to do is really just showcase the collaboration and the conversations and the knowledge transfer that happens amongst our group is really, really powerful. So even if you're not necessarily getting a lot of financial value out of this, you're learning so much from one another and you're hearing what others are doing. And that's why I come to places like this, because I'm in my Ohio bubble and I know what my Ohio guys are doing, but I'd love to learn what other people are doing, because it really just is, the rising tide for all of our boats to float up and give each other support.
Jen, can I ask you a question on
Absolutely.
that as a follow-up? I'm going totally rogue.
He did ask permission first.
I did ask
if you wanna know.
Sorry, you're no longer the moderator. No.
So you were talking about the different stakeholders, and
Yeah.
one of the things you invited me to your conference
Yes.
last year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things I was really impressed about in that is you had business officers, procurement, CIOs, CISOs,
HR.
all collaboratively together. How do you deal with that complex stakeholder? And this question would be for anyone. How do you deal with that complex set of stakeholders that really, when you think about shared services, like you got to get procurement to go along.
Oh,
you got to
absolutely.
get budget and finance to go along. You have to build culture in your internal IT team that, hey, this is okay. We're not giving something up. It's additive, it's going to help us. So do you have thoughts on how you build that culture of collaboration?
I do, and I think what we do intentionally at IUC is to make it cross-sectional, right? So we are breaking down silos not only amongst campuses, but on campuses. And so we're getting that HR leader and that VP of finance to talk about common goals, even on the same campus. And so it's important for us to have those cross-functional conversations more regularly, and that's how we actually structured, and that's a replicable structure if anyone wants to talk to me about it, how we do it, so that we're having purposeful conversations where we come together, not just at the annual summit, but we come together bi-monthly according to cohort of expertise, and then also monthly on this cross-sectional subgroup of folks who then talk about, okay, my HR group talked about this, and my finance group talked about this, and my procurement group talked about this. And then as a group of volunteers, thankfully, they give their time, they all come to me as staff in my group to talk about, okay, these are the goals and priorities that we would like to set as IUC to pursue. So yeah, it's fairly complex from like a structural standpoint, but it really works in the sense of giving voice to all of the different perspectives.
Thank you. So one purpose of this session is servicing shared services that already exist. How big is the gap between what's available and what institutions are actually using, and what's driving it? Is it awareness? Is it procurement friction, trust, or is there something else? Leah, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, when you're starting from ground zero and trying to approach how do you think about the challenge of coming together with another organization, sharing a service, what's the point? Why should we do it? Is kind of the first question. I think there's a couple of different, reasons why people approach this. You might prioritize based on ROI and thinking, what is a service that is, going to save us the most? And so when you think about that, everybody going it alone thinks, for any service that isn't differentiating based on the nuance of your organization, that's an opportunity. So if there's something where everyone else is kind of doing it in the same way and it doesn't have to do with the specific culture of your organization, that's an opportunity. What's the lowest hanging fruit in terms of financial reward or efficiency there? Jen and I were talking yesterday, and she made the point that maybe the lowest hanging fruit is where people have the most energy, because change management is such a huge component of making this transition and getting buy-in along the way, even if it isn't the most high-value target for creating a shared service. If it's the one that has the least friction, it'll help for all of the complex stakeholders involved to be able to come together and trust one another, so that then you can maybe make progress on a shared service that's a little bit more challenging, but maybe has a higher financial reward.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts on this area? What things are you looking at and have done in your area?
Yeah, I mean, we're really, we do a lot of polling of our membership, so all of our ideas come grassroots up, right? We are not a top-down situation. In fact, we don't even have a system in Ohio for our universities, so they are all individual organizations, which can be very challenging in getting them to coordinate with one another. So we really look at that from what do they want to do? I mean, to Leah's point, I was talking about, the enthusiasm part, but also I think a lot of it has to do with relationships. When we see a lot of turnover on our campuses, so there's fresh faces around the table, that sometimes will stall out efforts that had previously a lot of momentum. But that's all the more reason for this kind of centralized place where people can come and have the support to make these partnerships happen. Because if it's up to an individual campus to champion the work, if a key person leaves, you're dead in the water, right? And so as an organization, we really focus on what do they want to do, how can we maintain the momentum, but also how can we bridge the gap when we get fresh faces to come to the table, explain the value, help them get on board, and hopefully we'll continue on. Sometimes things stall out, but we do try really hard to bring people, drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And Jennifer, just I want to ask, because this is something we did in Pennsylvania, and I think you may have done it over there too, but cybersecurity collaboration is really a big deal too, and we're finding a lot of collaboration needs to happen between CISOs, and for those who don't have CISOs, believe it or not, there are still schools, believe it or not, that are not able to hire CISOs at this point, and in a lot of states across the country, and so they're collaborating and pulling that resource together. I think you might have done something with that.
We have, yeah. So our first project for IUC Collaborative Initiatives was cybersecurity, and believe it or not, it was picked by the VPs of finance. Who knew, right? They really saw it as the main thing, that they felt like they really wanted to have an idea of what everybody else was doing, to collaborate as much as possible, to share resources as much as possible. And there had been an informal group of CISOs meeting for a number of years prior to our involvement, but we expanded that group to all 14. So all 14 are now meeting bi-monthly. They're a subcommittee of our CIO group, and so that's a reporting structure that would happen internally. Now it happens at the IUC as well. And it's been just really exciting to see them work on this. So we worked with the CISOs specifically to set the objectives. We did not want to set artificial objectives for them, so they determined what their goals would be as a matter of collaboration in the project. We'll be concluding in September, so I can report back, but they're building a threat sharing platform. We have a resource library now where they can share information, because we're pretty mature in the cybersecurity space in Ohio, and so there's a lot of cool information to share amongst each other. But as far as goals that they have for working together, the threat sharing platform and also training pathways. So what the training pathways is going to do is set a minimum standard for cybersecurity professionals on each of our campuses, so that then we can go to the President's Council and request funding. So that funding doesn't go away with all of our lovely budget cuts that happen. Training tends to go off the table pretty quickly, we all know. And so our goal is to really support that and say, you've made this a fundamental priority for the IUC schools. This is how we get there.
Natalie, any thoughts on this one, or we'll get to the next question?
We'll go to the next, but one piece I will highlight that you mentioned is that there are several smaller institutions that do not have CISOs. So they look at how they can provide or pull in that resource either from other institutions with that experience, with that staffer, or I've heard even the virtual CISO model.
Yeah, it's a really complicated area. I can tell you that the A-Cup schools in Pennsylvania, at least 20 of them have come together to talk collaboratively about cybersecurity. It's really hard to find qualified people affordably that can do small school CISO responsibility. So certainly one that I'm really well aware of, and so I'm fortunate enough that we can cover that at Duquesne, but a lot of small schools in our area cannot. So let me shift gears a little bit. So what does it actually cost an institution in dollars, staff, time, risk exposure to solve a problem independently that shared services could address? Can you put a number on it, or at least make it concrete? Natalie, what are your thoughts?
So I grabbed a few notes here. So what we're seeing is, again, some of those smaller institutions are finding it harder to retain staff that can actually support some of the high demand services that are required on their campuses. And sometimes we see in our institutions as well, vendors maybe pulling those staffers with that type of experience and knowledge away. We also see that from businesses and industries who can provide the higher benefit, higher dollars for that experience and that knowledge. But the other piece is that we're finding it's expensive to replace that talent once they've left our participants or even our areas. And it could be upwards $100K, $200K to find and staff that replacement experienced individual with that expertise. And that's not only just for salary, but even it goes beyond into the training and bringing them up to speed on how to support our areas.
Thank you. Sean, what are your thoughts? One thing I want to say too is, Internet 2 does this tremendous job with the shared services. We were talking in a group of CIOs that I come to this conference and sometimes I hear what everyone's talking about. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, there's so many acronyms and things. I'm like, wow, you guys are doing some amazing things and I couldn't possibly understand or comprehend it. But obviously, Sean, there's value to all this work that you all do at Internet 2, and what does that mean?
Yeah, I'll talk through one example just so I can get into pure dollars and cents, addressing the question. We do, in the Net Plus context, we do something that we call service evaluation. That's not running a shared service, that's preparing to launch and deliver a service. So this is basically a one-time expense, if you think about it, related to an ongoing cost. But it'll give you some idea of the magnitude. We had a group of graduate students that were brought in to look at how much time do we spend collectively across typically 5 to 7 universities participating in one of these efforts on legal, on security reviews, on accessibility reviews, on advocating on product roadmap, on developing shared implementation guidance, all these things that we do that whether it's a cloud service or whether it's a shared storage array, you need to have confidence in what's the cybersecurity profile, how are you integrating it with existing infrastructure. So that work comes out to be, and it's a purposefully conservative estimate, about $22,000 per institution in terms of value that the next institution coming gets. So you think once you start multiplying that by some of these services that have 100 or approaching 200 subscribers, you really get to a meaningful cost savings by the research and education community working together. The other thing I'll say just on cost modeling, and this is where I think we can go pull examples from the cloud, and Tom, you were part of writing some of the early ECAR papers around universities moving to the cloud, is really thinking about how do we make sure we're modeling in all of our costs. It's not a pure, all right, we're moving from this infrastructure to this infrastructure. Natalie was talking about considering the staffing costs. You need to think about power and co-location experience and opportunity cost. It's really important to sort of think through that full gamut when you're making a decision. And I think it's going back to the last question. It's really important when you're in a leadership role to advocate, to have that conversation with your staff in information technology or really anywhere to talk about, yes, we're moving to a shared service. We're doing something that we are not going to do anymore. Here's what it's going to free you up to do. Here's how it's going to make your life better. Because I think often as technologists, we become really attached, maybe attracted too, but attached to the technology that we develop and that we own and that we maintain. And it's hard to give it up.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, hey, someone else can do that nearly as good as you, because they're never going to do it as good as you, right? But someone can do it nearly as good as you, and that frees you up to do X, Y, and Z, or that reduces your workload, or that creates this opportunity. I think that cultural element of it, we were talking about it earlier, is just so vital that I wanted to underscore it.
Thank you very much. And Sean mentioned something about the cloud. When we started cloud computing and education, by the way, we didn't start with how to get to the cloud. We started with how much it costs. We did a total cost of ownership calculation, and the hardest thing we tried to do was the qualitative side. And Jennifer, I know that you guys have some interesting things you do for shared services now, right? I'm kind of curious about this because I know how hard it was for us to build that. I'm curious what
Are
you
you
guys have
talking
done.
about my enthusiasm program?
You have an enthusiasm.
We
for
will.
it. Tell us
That's
more.
that's my term for it. No, we do a lot of kind of creative rewards for our members to participate with us. So we get pretty granular. I mean, down to like most motions made in a meeting or most posts to the listserv. And it's really just bragging rights. And so, but it does come down to some really important metrics like how many contracts are you using? How many RFP committees did you serve on? How many, ways did you engage with us to support the work of the collective? And, the more that we can reward folks and make them feel appreciated, I think is really powerful because it takes away from your regular job, right? I mean, they're trying to maintain their own 9 to 5 or 24/7 in some instances of the work that they're obligated to do for their institution. So taking time out to do something for the collective good can feel like extra, because it is extra. But we really try hard to show our appreciation. I had originally started with things like plaques. That gets old. Nobody wants a lot of plaques, right? But they really love a shout out and a little like confetti thing on a Zoom call. It's amazing the things that make them feel special, but we do want them to feel special.
I appreciate that. So shared services requires us to give up some control for collective benefit. What conditions have been in place for a trade-off to feel worth it? And where does that typically fall apart? I often hear this when people are asked, even internally or externally, like, when I'm going to start shared services, I can't give that up. It's mine. I can't give away that control I own. I don't feel comfortable that I don't trust that organization or that person. But there's got to be a way to get past that, Leah. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, trust is foundational, and value alignment, mission alignment. I do a lot of work in partnerships, and any partnership isn't going to. A lot of partnerships start from the transactional and then kind of lead into a partnership model. But what the secret magic behind moving a transactional relationship to a partnership model is starting small with the relationship and establishing that trust and having so many open conversations around what the shared goals are, what are the shared values, how do we align, what are the alignment opportunities, and it takes a really long time to form a good relationship with another entity you might want to partner with or have a shared service with to really kind of know where the value is and want to, put that effort into the relationship, but also it's like Jen was saying, those relationships are as fragile as the people. Yeah. As soon as one stakeholder leaves, then you have to start from scratch again. So not just establishing that trust with a single person or a single team, but really kind of infusing that team dynamic across the cultures of two organizations.
Thanks. Natalie?
I'll probably echo some of the things that Sean just mentioned. When you look at the shared service itself, entities want to know, our participants want to know, is this really going to help with the pain point that we have across our institution? Or is it, like you said, just swapping out another cost? Like AI may become, even though it's going to help us with so many things, it was a cost that wasn't on the budget earlier, depending upon what the solution is. So I believe that's one of the big things is to really see, can I use this, this new shared services to eliminate specifically a problem that we have across our organization? Is there an opportunity to use funds that we have, maybe end of year funds, or is it really going to have to be spread across what we have in the budget already?
One of the things that really strikes me, maybe Natalie, maybe this is a question for you in some respects, and maybe Jen as well. One of the things that strikes me is I see some of these really good examples locally. If you think about the Wrens as an example, how much do you think sort of starting with acting locally helps to build that trust, whether it's in state or in region? Do you think that helps? Do you think that's an interesting and valuable starting point for thinking about where you're going to develop and deploy shared services?
Yeah, it starts with that trust. So as we build the relationships locally with the participants that are in our area or the other institutions that are in our area and discuss what their needs are, where their challenge and pain points are, and they see us be able to share, here are some solutions, some services that we've used or seen see other institutions be successful, and give them those examples, then that local trust, I think, can spread when we start sharing those experiences across the region.
I would agree with that. Sorry.
Like, I want to add too.
I'm going to add first. So I would say it's definitely completely what Natalie's talking about, as far as, you know, starting with those individual relationships and building from there. That trust is super, super important, and it's more easier to achieve in smaller groups, more local groups, right? But I think the other thing that I think about a lot is the need for continuing to prove value over time, right? So you can't take it for granted that you have this relationship and that these people trust you and that they're coming and talking about their issues. You have to continue to perform as an IUC or whatever entity you are, because really at the end of the day, you're answerable to your individual institution. And if this is not working for your institution, you should not be participating in it, right? And so we have to continue to show value. We have to be very, very transparent about the ways we go about things. You know, the number of times I send documentation to a member institution, or walking somebody through what the process was, how we got there, just to, you know, it's not that they don't trust us, but just to verify that this is going to fit for what their institution needs is vitally important. And if you're working with an organization that won't do that for you, find another group, because they really should be doing that for you on a continuous basis.
So since we were talking about trust, I figured this is a good time to talk about when something didn't work. I mean, obviously, you know, there are cases that come up where these shared service models are good in principle and they just don't quite work out where they need to. And maybe you guys have some examples of where that is and what we learned from that. Natalie, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I've been with that organization about 3 years, so I went back to the coffers for this one. So I think maybe early 2000s or so, and some team members can probably may remember that, but we did provide a shared service model for storage. And we partnered with one of our participants to be able to provide that shared storage service, designed it with that participant so that it was fully redundant. We were able to offer it to other participants across the region, but it wasn't the price point they needed. It was just too expensive. So we found that one didn't work for us. It worked for that individual participant, but not being able to, you know, have others take part in it. So that was a learning point for us. We've also seen that sometimes what it does is it allows other participants to go to the vendor and say, here, this is possible, and then they can find the cost savings by having that comparison out there. So that was one of the things. Another one was providing, I think, a telephony service for SIP trunks. So again, it gave participants something to go to the vendor and make a comparison, but it wasn't something that we were going to be able to sustain.
Yeah.
That happens to us too. I mean, we're perfect in every way, of course. But no, I've been with IUC for 10 years, and my advocacy in leading all of this is really incrementalism. Like, let's do it slowly, let's build trust over time, let's make this happen. The times that we failed in the distant past, not in my tenure, of course, but have been when folks really wanted to take a big swing and wanted it to be an all-in, high-value, high-dollar situation, right? Those then became all-in or all out. And so people went all out. I mean, they just weren't willing to take the risk that this could be anything other than an absolute success. And so I think, you know, the argument I make is that, yes, you can take big steps, but you got to take little steps first. And I think that, you know, trying to come out and, you know, do a giant project and everybody has to put in hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, that's a lot, even when you have a really trusting group. And so I think, you know, I think Leah said this earlier, building on those small wins, really gaining momentum, and then going for the bigger targets is the way to go.
Thanks. And I'll come right back to you. So we, obviously, Sean, we have a history here of in higher education. When we think we don't like something, we just go try to build it ourselves and do this. In a variety of cases. I mean, we built our own ERP, our own learning management system. I mean, we just basically, that's kind of all shared services approach. I mean, Internet 2 does a lot of things where we come to you all for different considerations like this. I mean, what are your thoughts on what maybe things have worked or didn't work that maybe kind of you can highlight and help us with in terms of considerations that you've seen?
Yeah, well, I mean, just in my personal life, the correct answer right now is if I don't like something, I just build it in Claude Code, and it can be exactly how I want it. I think one of the things I'll say I have learned in my work history, working at a national organization for the last decade plus, is that when we're thinking about deploying something, it's really important to take a hard look at what is unique about what we're building for research and education. And oftentimes we do have really unique requirements. We do have things where commercially available products or services just don't quite meet the needs, whether it's thinking about the diversity of the stakeholders we serve, or low latency environments for research, or whatever it might be. But oftentimes, there is a solution out there. There is a commercially viable solution out there. And I think there's an argument to be made to where can we use what already exists and focus our really talented people across the country and across the globe on delivering what's unique to our community. And that's the one thing I would say I've learned, because you're right, we're all technologists. That's our natural inclination, is let's go build. We can solve this, and we can. We can. We're all smart, talented people in this room. I know so many of you. But it's stepping back and asking that question: should we, or what's unique about what we're trying to build? I think the SIP trunking is a great example of that. I think that was pretty unique to solving some of the needs of R&E moving out of traditional analog lines, and we live in a very different world sitting here in 2026 for our telephony and mobile needs.
So I'm going to ask a quick question here. I mean, you mentioned Claude Code, and so is AI going to be what breaks the hurdle of we can't do this ourselves? Is that going to be the one that basically says we need to get help and do something different? Sean knows this. Him and I have talked. I've changed my mind on my direction of AI like 6 times in this last month, and so I think I've changed it twice in this conference. So, is that going to be a thing that kind of breaks things? What do you think, Sean?
I'll jump in.
Go for it. I was going to say, if I knew, I'd be running an AI company.
Right?
Yeah.
The point that comes to mind when you ask that question, Tom, is related to a comment Sean made earlier around, AI being additive. And so, maybe AI is the differentiating service for you, and that's where you want to put your energy to build on your own. But the way shared services comes into play is that you might be able to find the resources you need to put your energy into that domain-specific AI implementation if you can realize some efficiencies with some other non-differentiating services.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I think there's examples of where that already exists. You think about some of what NRP, the National Research Platform, has delivered with organizations working together, but you also think in the partnerships side, thinking about maybe some of the federal government aspects like NAIR. I think we've talked a lot with many CIOs and IT leaders about how do we approach some of the foundation model providers together. I think there is a sense of collectivism that this has brought out that is good and positive.
Thanks. I have one last question, and then I might have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions at the end by anyone in the audience. But so we're 30 years in. Internet 2 is still making the case for doing things together. what would it look like if the community was truly all in on shared services, and what's standing between here and there? We'll kind of start the way we began with maybe Jennifer down the end and work our way down, because I'll let Sean close the shop.
I don't have a great answer for that question. I have to be honest. No, I mean, I think what I would love to see is, organizations like mine really reaching out to other partners. And, there's folks on this panel that I work with regularly. I've got Ornette in the audience, hey guys, who we work with regularly to really just bring together expertise that we don't have to create for ourselves, right? So we don't necessarily need to be the one-size-fits-all solution for everything shared services that our schools need, but I can bring those partners to the table who have that expertise that then we can collaborate even amongst the collaborators, if that makes sense, to really come together to make a holistic solution for the schools. Because at the end of the day, it's really about the institution and the students they serve. I mean, we're here to create that future workforce, right? We really want to see our institutions succeed, and whatever we can do to make that happen may not be something that I can come up with as an individual. I guess I do have a good answer.
I feel like I don't have a good answer for that one either, but here's what I'm going to say. It's related to a point made earlier around, Sean, you were asking about like regional. Is regional really important? But I think the context around why regional is important is because to form these relationships, you need, like a shared culture or some common ground. Common ground is the foundation for anything. The Cal Arts and Vermont College of Fine Arts example I gave, those are institutions that are two ends of the country. That's not regional, but they have common ground because they're both art schools. And so I think all in on shared services is seeing more unique examples of entities coming together that you wouldn't have even expected, but because they found common ground and they saw a need and they wanted to go forward and create something innovative, that means our culture's kind of shifted into thinking outside of the box on how to create these efficiencies.
Great. Natalie?
We've talked a lot about building relationships, and I think moving forward, you've got to have the transparency in the services that are being provided, trust, and then, of course, controlling costs. That's big for so many of the of our participants moving forward. So they've got to see that as we bring those services moving forward. I think also just reviewing those services to see if they are providing a solution that's going to work for the needs of the participants.
Sean?
I think two things. I think one, continuing to push the boundaries of advanced technology. And when we work together, we put ourselves in a position to do that, whether it's pooling resources or expertise to deliver more advanced technology to all the people we serve and the society that we serve. Secondly, I think it's finding that meaningful reduction in duplication of effort across the country and across the globe to pool expertise and deliver meaningful outcomes. I think hopefully that reduces resource, that reduces costs in the time of austerity that we find ourselves in.
Thanks, Sean. So we have about 6 minutes left here. If there's anyone that wants to ask a question, the panelists, please, there's microphones in the aisles here, but if not, I'm going to ask at least one more question.
And remember that Tara wants someone to ask a really hard question.
Yeah, really
Did you
hard
just say
question.
no? I think you should go.
Leo's going to ask us.
It's clear.
Really enjoyed it. As some of you know, this is a topic that's been near and dear to my heart for a while.
The mic might be on.
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
No, it is
There we go.
now.
Now it
It
is.
is now clear.
There we
It
go.
is now. We actually had them cut your mic.
Yeah.
So I could ask a lot of questions, but I want to really hone in on one in particular, and that is, I think we don't recognize that a shared multi-tenant application that we're using collectively, across hundreds of institutions is a shared service. Mm-hmm. We don't recognize that our vendor community is not outside of our institution, it is inside of our institution. We're sort of understanding a distinction that's marginal between what is internal or external. And we often look at our vendors as if they are commodities that we're purchasing, not a relationship that we've established. Now, when you've got good contracts, which NetPlus likes to make sure we do, and gives good guidance on, and you've got a good framework to work with that, and the deliverables are well understood, the SLAs are well understood, okay, it works, and that relationship can be sort of at arm's length. We now have a technology disruption with AI where the vendor and our internal decisions to how we want to use those tools is changing dramatically, and it's going to be rapid, and it's going to be rather profound. So my question is this: whether it's with respect to governance or what's the right scale, regional or national, how do we want to work with the vendor community as they're struggling with AI and its influence, and we're struggling with AI and its influence? And how do we carve a path out here where there's more partnership, not just in a stronger together as a community on the demand side, but together with the people that are actually supporting us?
So I'm going to ask Leah, since she's our corporate partnership person, to help us answer that.
Like, this is a Leah question.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is educate our industry colleagues. I have a whole tangent that I go on around the difference between calling an entity a vendor versus an industry colleague or an industry partner. And when you change the language you're using, it helps you reframe the context around how you view that individual. And some organizations you work with might be vendors. Like maybe your survey software isn't your core business function, and so that's a very transactional relationship. You're definitely going to think of them as vendors. Educause as vendors. We have organizations we work with where it's like, okay, you provide event services and we pay you, and it's transactional, but it's, right. Where was I going with that? So anyway, for the entities that are really providing like the core business functions of the university or transforming higher ed, we need for them to understand the nuance of higher education. So we do a lot to educate the corporate community on the nuances of higher education. We have a whole program that we try to put as many corporate partners through as possible to just even introduce the sales team to why procurement cycles are longer, how a public institution works differently than a private. If more of the industry community can understand the nuance of higher education and create those strong higher ed verticals, then we'll have more better partners to support our work.
Right. And it's not just SLED, it's truly higher education. It's
Yeah,
a very
exactly.
different animal than
I
other
know.
public entities.
When a huge organization comes at me and the person I'm working with is like, SLED, I'm like, okay, so tell me about higher education.
Thanks, Leah. So we'll be lightning round here, so quick if we can.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I thought you had 6 minutes, so I thought I had at least 2 left. But, a quick one. My name is Megan Masters. I am the Assistant Vice President
We can hear
for
you.
Instructional Technology and Regional Networking at the University of Maryland College Park. And sort of following up on that and working with vendors, as we're seeing sort of changes in business practices sometimes, right? So I'll use Instructure for an example. They had a major outage in the fall that was super disruptive to our core business services, right, as higher education institutions. And we were looking for some type of remediation for that outage. And we're sort of bound by terms of conditions, right, that are managed at the Internet 2 level as an Internet 2 school. And I'm just wondering, as we're seeing this, how do we strengthen those in a way that allow us to work with our colleagues that are in vendor roles to say, listen, we'd like to take advantage of these T&Cs. We would like to look for, some type of reimbursement for that outage. It was extremely disruptive. They ended up saying it was a force majeure, even though it was related to an AWS. They said this was not an Instructure problem, it's an AWS problem. Yeah. And those T's and C's can be a little, because we don't oversee who they then are working with. So it's like, if it's Fred's, web services, apparently, a lot of us in these higher ed institutions can't necessarily push back. So just questions on that and how we continue to partner on tightening up maybe some of those T's and C's to make sure that we can have an avenue to look for some type of reimbursement if this continues to sort of happen.
So I'm gonna
Thoughts on
answer that one quickly if I can. My suggestion is that we should get those things considered as part of our legal agreements with the Net Plus stuff, and
Yes.
engage Sean and the legal team in that area in a meaningful way. We're improving that each time we go through that process. So I hope that we can do that, and so maybe we could talk a little bit more separately with Sean and his team.
Yeah, let me hit that just for like 30 seconds. So I think one, it's, ensuring that our contracts that are the delivery mechanism for service are living documents. That as things happen, as we learn, as the market changes, we react to those and update them. The second thing I would say, and Jen is doing some work on an Internet 2 group that we have, thinking about vendor management and vendor relationship management, is actually these solution stacks are becoming increasingly complex. When you think about AI, and if we use Instructure as an example, I think, we're being recorded, so I don't know how many, but they have more than one underlying foundation model provider that is delivering services that is critical to reporting, this and that. Do you really understand where all that stacks out? Yep. There's room for growth for us as a community there, and thinking about what are all the underlying technologies we're relying on, not just the application layer.
Yep. So I am really sorry we are out of time, but if you want to come up, we will answer your question afterwards. So thank you guys very much. Thank our panelists. Appreciate all your time and effort.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good job.
Good job.